Welcome to the game, Did You See That?, where you can explore pathways to a career in the public health laboratory. In this game, you're going to meet several professionals in this field. Be sure to pay close attention because you'll be asked questions along the way, and you'll need the right answer to advance in this game. So if you're ready, let's begin. Are you someone who likes the outdoors? How about boating, fishing, and even handling things like frogs and water snakes? Well, one career to consider is limnology. Let's meet Mike and see what it's all about.
Hello. My team is part of the environmental side of our public health laboratory. We monitor freshwater sampling sites across the state of Iowa year-round. Honestly, I never thought I'd get paid to go fishing. I never thought I'd be able to collect water samples or search for and research the critters that my mom suggested I just leave in the water. The whole drive behind this environmental sampling is that all of these critters that we collect have varying degrees of tolerance for pollution, essentially. And so the stuff that we capture, or that we see in our samples, gives us an idea. If we see a lot of things in a wide variety of critters, probably the water quality is pretty decent. But if we see very few critters or none, probably we're looking at an aquatic environment that's probably impacted by organic pollutants.
Mike is a limnologist. The word limnology comes from the root word limni, meaning lake. From what language is limni taken? A. Greek, B. Latin, or C. Native American? The answer is A, Greek. Limnology is the study of inland waters, such as lakes, rivers, and ponds. If you were correct, move ahead one space. And now that you got a feel for how to play the game, let's meet Beth. She's a medical laboratory technician.
After high school, I went to a community college program and became a medical laboratory technician. Before I came to the public health lab, I spent some time working in a hospital laboratory. The work was interesting, but when I saw the ad for a lab technician at the public health lab, I decided to check it out. I've had the opportunity to work in several areas of the public health lab, from virology to serology and maternal screening, and now I'm working in microbiology. One of the first areas I learned here in micro was parasitology. I can now spot the small eggs and larvae under the microscope and can identify the different types of parasites. I'm also learning about testing for tuberculosis, and that's a new area for me as well. There are so many different tests done here at the Public Health Lab that I don't think I'll ever get bored. Spending 2 years to get my associate's degree and to become a medical laboratory technician was a very smart move on my part.
In the parasitology lab, Beth can quickly tell which of these is a hookworm egg. Which one do you think it is? The answer is B. That was a tough one, so if you got that right, you can move ahead 2 spaces. Now let's meet our next scientist.
Hi, I'm the supervisor of the serology section at our state public health laboratory. In our lab, we use a variety of antibody detection methods to test for about 40 infectious agents that include hepatitis, mumps, measles, syphilis, and West Nile virus, to name a few. I'm also the coordinator of the Radiological Emergency Response Team. We're responsible for collecting environmental samples that are tested for radioactivity. We gather everything from vegetation, air, soil, water, even ice and snow. Our team, which is based at our public health laboratory, is part of the emergency response system for our state's nuclear power plants.
Tom said he does training exercises to prepare in case of an emergency involving the release of radioactivity into the environment. Which of the following events is considered to be the worst radioactive disaster? A. 3 Mile Island, B. the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, or C, the Chernobyl disaster? And the answer is C. The accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Soviet Union is considered to be the worst nuclear disaster. In 1986, when one of the plant's reactors exploded, it was so powerful that 8 tons of radioactive material was released into the atmosphere. If you got that right, move ahead 1 space. Which of these is known to carry West Nile virus? A. Bat, B. Chicken, C. Bee, D. Mosquito, or E. Mouse? And the answer is D. West Nile is most often spread by the bite of an infected mosquito. If you were right, move ahead 1 space. You ready for another scientist? Let's meet Trisha.
During outbreaks of contagious diseases, our lab is extremely busy and is in direct contact with federal agencies monitoring the spread of these illnesses. This is the same type of testing we use to detect dangerous organisms that might be used in bioterrorism. In October of 2007, I spent 3 weeks as part of a team sent to India to train the laboratory technicians in that country. We taught them how to quickly and accurately test for influenza viruses, including the dangerous avian flu virus known as H5N1. The technicians were really excited to learn the new testing methods and were so grateful to us for coming. India was beautiful.
What type of dangerous influenza virus was Trisha's team testing for? And the answer is avian influenza. If you got that right, move ahead 1 space. There are many different labs within a public health laboratory. One of them is the newborn screening lab. What are babies tested for in this lab? A. Influenza, B. Metabolic and genetic disorders, or C. Tuberculosis? And the answer is B. If you were correct, move ahead 2 spaces. All right, we're about halfway there. Let's keep moving and meet Bev.
Terrorism is always in the news. It's on the television and in the movies. But did you know that the public health laboratories are the ones responsible for testing that suspicious material? One part of my job as emergency response coordinator is to help prepare local laboratorians to handle that highly infectious organisms in their labs and to safely ship them to us. I also work with teams of first responders. These are the men and women who work with hazardous materials, the fire and rescue units, and the Department of Public Health. Together we set up field exercises to practice the skills we'll need to respond to emergencies. Besides acts of bioterrorism, large disease outbreaks can also trigger the emergency response network. We have to be ready to act if there's a sudden epidemic or a pandemic of a contagious disease such as avian influenza, tuberculosis, or West Nile virus. Public health is also involved with natural disasters that require emergency responses. In the aftermath of floods and tornadoes, we're required to monitor for water and soil contaminants. My years in a hospital laboratory and my background as a medical technologist have prepared me well for my current position. One thing I enjoy about my job is the diverse groups of preparedness partners with whom I get to work. I have the opportunity to work with hazmat and with other first response teams, as well as continuing to interact with my fellow laboratorians.
There are many things that can trigger the emergency response network. What did Bev specifically mention? A. Large disease outbreaks, B. Floods, or C. Car accidents. Bev mentioned both large disease outbreaks and floods as possible triggers to emergency response. So if you answered either A or B, move ahead one space. Bev said she works with first responders, including hazmat teams. From what two words was the abbreviation hazmat created?
Hazmat comes from the words hazardous materials. If you guessed that right, move ahead one space. Now let's meet Mary.
Hi. What kind of science interests you? Would you like to grow bacteria that is making someone sick and then find out which antibiotics a doctor can prescribe to kill it? How about performing DNA fingerprinting on bacteria to identify a particular strain that's causing an outbreak of disease? Or maybe the idea of looking for microscopic parasites appeals to you instead. You could also be suiting up to work in a special lab where you can separate a dangerous pathogen from other bacteria growing in a specimen and then perform the testing necessary to identify the dangerous organism. I've been able to do all of those things and more in my career as a medical technologist. Microbiology is still an exciting field for me because bacteria are living things. They can even change and adapt themselves to survive an attack by antibiotics. There's an ongoing battle between science and bacteria, and working in a public health lab puts me on the front lines of the fight.
One way that microbiologists begin to identify bacteria is by the characteristics they display when grown on various types of media. What are these areas of bacterial growth called? A. Colonies, B. Spores, C. Growth plates, or D. Fraternities.
And the answer is A, colonies. Microbiologists use many different types of media to identify bacteria by their colonial growth. If you answered correctly, move ahead another space.
One of the things Mary mentioned was the DNA fingerprinting of bacteria. Here are the DNA fingerprints of 5 bacteria. Since scientists can never say for certain that any 2 DNA patterns are identical, they use the word indistinguishable instead. So which of these 2 patterns are indistinguishable from each other? The answer is C and E. By comparing the DNA of organisms found in different patients, an outbreak can be identified, treated, and limited. Okay, it's time for the next scientist.
Hi, I'm a chemist in the organic analysis section of a state public health laboratory. Our job is to help keep the public safe by testing drinking water, wastewater, monitoring wells from around gas stations and landfills, air, sediment, rivers, lakes, and streams to learn if they contain any toxic or dangerous organic substances. After a heavy rain, substances like pesticides, fertilizers, and animal waste may be in the runoff and can end up in the water system. Acts of nature such as floods and hurricanes can send dangerous materials like oil, fuel, and bacteria into the rivers and streams. In addition, chemical spills from industry, small businesses, and homes are also a possible source of contamination. It is very rewarding to have a job that helps keep people safe. By monitoring the environment for hazardous substances, we help protect the public from many things they probably never ever think about, but luckily for them, we do.
Lisa mentioned 7 substances that can contaminate a water supply. Can you name any 3 of them?
And the answers are pesticides, fertilizers, animal waste, oil, fuel, bacteria, and chemicals. If you named any 3 of these, move ahead 1 space. All right, now it's time to meet our last scientist.
Hi, I graduated from college with a degree in chemistry and have worked in a public health laboratory for more than 19 years. During my early years in the lab, I worked to protect the environment by looking for pesticides and herbicides in water, air, and soil. After working as a chemist for a few years, I had the opportunity to serve in a new role as the state training coordinator. In this role, I bring students into the laboratory for tours, job shadowing experiences, internships, and fellowships. I also coordinate specialized training for laboratory staff, such as foodborne illness identification and flu prevention. But the best part of my job is being able to share the public health laboratory message and to reach out to students like you to encourage you to one day join our workforce. I know that many of you love science and biology, and yet you don't see any clear pathway for your future. Maybe you don't want to be a doctor or research scientist or even a teacher, but you'd still love to do something that really matters. Public health laboratories need people just like you with a passion for science and a desire to find a rewarding career that's filled with opportunities. Take it from me, the Public Health Laboratory is a great place to be.
All right, so here's the final question. Get this right, and you'll move ahead 2 spaces. The public health profession is facing a workforce shortage that literally threatens the nation. By the year 2020, how many public health workers do you think will be needed? A. 250, B. 25,000, or C. 250,000?
And the answer is C, 250,000. If you got that right, move ahead 2 spaces. Well, you've reached the end of the game. Thanks for playing. But remember, it's not about winning or losing, it's about you finding a great career. And if you'd like to know more, be sure to check out our bonus section where you can find additional information.